right, I do have Francis Muhire, an economist. He's the founder of Yield Africa. He's also the CEO for Neo Econometric. I would like to talk about COVID-19 and so forth. Francis Muhire is also a lecturer at Makerere University Business School. Very good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Lomio.
Indeed, give us a situation analysis of how COVID-19 has affected our economy. What are we looking at now? Is there a bigger chance of our small and medium-sized enterprises actually pulling through? What is on the ground? What do you see? An exacerbation? What do you see?
Thank you, Lomio, and good morning, our dear viewers out there. Of course, COVID-19 continues to bite. And the most affected actually are micro and small enterprises, and this is actually where most of Ugandans lie. And you know, they are struggling. They have been somehow left alone. We've seen government coming up with interventions, but the question is how much has those interventions been effective to keep them afloat. But talking about COVID-19, just I always say that COVID-19 is going to be here for a long time. We have short-term impacts and also long-term impacts.
You know, and you're going to say that whether or not government interventions were effective, we assume that this money reached them, but it was not enough to actually help them get resuscitated during this COVID-19 pandemic. But then the fact is they did not get any of this money.
Yeah, we saw in the first lockdown, the month that was released, 555 billion Uganda shillings, which was put in UDB.
455.
No, 555. It never reached SMEs because UDB came out and said this money was not meant for struggling SMEs, and yet the justification to get this money was actually to help these struggling SMEs. But of course, we saw in the recent supplementary budget where the president allocated the elected Minister of Finance and the Bank of Uganda to get about 200 billion shillings for these SMEs.
And that's where we can talk about the effectiveness of now the 200 billion. Will it be enough?
Well, first of all, as I told you, micro and small enterprises, they account for over 90% of our economy. So when you tell me that you're only allocating 200 billion shillings, still for me I look at it as dropping
one trading center.
Yeah, you're just dropping, just a drop in an ocean. And of course, not forgetting that even this 200 billion, it's only 100 billion that has been secured. The other 100 billion is going to be coming from the participating banks. In other words, they are going to be doing more domestic borrowing. They are going to borrow further from these commercial banks, and that also has an implication to push more. It will put more pressure on the price of capital or the interest rate. Yet our interest rate is already high. In fact, what the government should be doing right now is putting mechanism that will reduce the pressure or reduce the interest rate, that you don't have to go all these procedures to look for government help, but instead if you go to the money market, if you go to the commercial banks or money or credit providers, you get credit at a cheap price. Yes.
We have an economist, Francis Muhire, and he is also a lecturer at Makerere University Business School. Let's talk about what Parliament has been doing when it comes to COVID-19 interventions and so forth. Do you think that they've done a good job?
Well, I mean, they have just entered the House. It's not even a quarter. But one thing I want to first start with what he has said, that the Parliament provided the resources or the funds to buy vaccines. They haven't provided more, but the Minister of Health can't get these vaccines. I want to assure you that what is happening, this is like a wake-up call to everyone, especially to developing economies. We have always been having this tendency where we have to wait for solutions coming from abroad, especially from the Western North America. So I want to assure you that when we talk about this vaccine, there's a lot of economics behind it. When you talk of vaccine development or the market, it is controlled, 90% of the vaccine market is controlled by only about 6 firms, pharmaceutical firms. We're talking of GSK from UK, we're talking of Pfizer, Merck, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson from USA, and Sanofi, which is a French company. So you can imagine, and Biotech, Germany. The whole production is, dominated by about 4 countries. So what does this mean? These countries like USA, when you look at, for example, the best technology in development of vaccine, which is mRNA, the USA government started funding this project 11 years ago. So they have control and patents over it. So these developing economies, for them, they want to make money. These pharmaceutical companies, they want to make money. So they make sure they control the production. And for them, their target is always high-end or developed economies. That's why you see economies like Canada, they have booked and hoarded any vaccine developed in the European Union right now cannot get out.
Of course, this is a lesson for us, Honorable
Exactly,
Mapenduzi, to focus on our own research.
Yeah, so,
Indeed.
So they want first get that profit from those high profit margins, those developed economies. So what does this mean? That these countries realized this and invested in research and development. That's why every day I say, until this government realizes and arranges its priorities, we invest much into health and education. Then we are going to be, in these issues. But I want to make this point that while we are giving much attention to COVID-19, COVID-19 is just a natural accelerator or a catalyst for what is happening. The global economy or the entire world today is going through a great, inevitable, and unprecedented change. If you pause and see what is happening, the world is changing. First of all, you have the fourth industrial revolution going on. You have evolution of money going on. We're trying to shift from fiat money to digital currency, talk of CBDC or central bank digital currency, virtual currency, cryptocurrency. However much when you go to sub-Saharan Africa and other developing economies, they don't know that this is happening. Talk about deglobalization, all this is to do with COVID-19. COVID-19 is just trying to help us that there is a great change going on. You have to pause.
To make that huge leap.
Yeah, you have to pause, make a great reset or robust reset, and then start afresh, meaning that you have to stop doing the way you've been conducting business. That is lesson number one. Unfortunately,
but what I've noticed in Uganda, even though the situation warrants for change, our small and medium-sized enterprises have been unable to make that shift all the way to that digital economy simply because of the low penetration of the internet within our country. That's what I've noticed. They know what they need to do, but the infrastructure is largely there or limited.
Of course, that is the role of the government. However, these SMEs are trying to adjust with what is going on, but it's the government that has to put this infrastructure in place. When you talk of, let's say, SMEs or even micro, or trying to get on board and to shift into the digital world, I mean, this all rotates around internet data. That's what we're talking of at the fourth industrial revolution that is going on. It revolves around internet data. So, but you've seen instead the government has imposed more taxes. I'm sure even the honorable, he will find it internet to be expensive. So what about a common Ugandan? So we are talking about encouraging micro, small and medium enterprises to get on board, but you're introducing taxes. So that's the challenge we have. But to take you back, I'm saying that this change that is happening, some countries predicted this, that this might happen. That's why you have those countries which are in position to produce vaccines in the shortest period of time. So this requires that the government has to stop doing business the way we've been handling business. Otherwise, what you're looking right now, what is biting, these are just short term, but you have long term, implications. So the government has to pause and we set, we have that great reset.
Francis Muhire, what do you make of all this? I mean, this money for the MPs, for the cars, came through at a time when we were discussing the meager 100,000 Ugandan shillings that was being given to Ugandans who were vulnerable. And during that time, government was saying we do not have enough money. That's why we've decided to give out this 100,000 Ugandan shillings to cushion Ugandans who were affected by COVID-19 pandemic. But then later on, we see 200 million Ugandan shillings going to each MP to actually buy cars. Don't you think that was excess spending on their part?
Thank you, Romeo. Just I said that COVID has been here for over 20 months. It didn't come yesterday.
Indeed.
It's 20 months here. Yes, these ones, the 11th Parliament has come, the 10th Parliament, the one which approved that money. But there are two things you have to look at. One thing, we have a very big government, of which this government, in terms of the size, of which around 15.6 trillion shillings is actually spent on non-salaries or wages, and this is a recurrent expenditure. This money is, what is paying the MPs' cars, those district, officials' cars, and all other government workers. So we are literally spending over 19% of the entire budget on this recurrent, expenditure. So the question is, don't you think it's high time we change the way we spend? That's why we talk of adjusting our expenditure behavior. Yes, the MP will need money. Will need the car. That is okay. But how many MPs? You're talking of a poor country like Uganda, which cannot afford spending on luxury, having a big size of the parliament, we're talking about 529 MPs for just a population of 42 million, Ugandan. So the other issue the other point I want to make is that when you look at Uganda's politics, politics have been commercialized. Everything is wrong. The entire public choice mechanism. You have this kind of system that attracts political investors. I call them political investors. Hopefully, Martin, with his discussion, I think is not among those political investors, but the majority. Because the system we have, the commercialized politics, attracts more of political investors, not leaders. And this, goes all the way from bottom to top. From
where do I benefit mentality.
Exactly. So this is what happens. During elections, of course, you have these political investors who invest everything they have. They sell land. It's a do or die.
So at the end of the day, they have to recoup the money.
Yes. So that's why I don't expect these political investors to be like, what is going on? Everyone needs to sacrifice. Trust me, you won't see that happen. And to solve this problem, we have to start with the entire public choice mechanism, starting with, sensitizing the electorates that, please, these handouts are very dangerous. You need to vote leaders, not political investors.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Martin Ojara-Mapinduzi. Also, Francis Muhire, the lecturer with Makerere University Business School. He comes with a wealth of information. We shall continue to call on to you to talk about the effect of the pandemic on the economy post-COVID-19 pandemic. You're still watching Morning at NTV. We do have a lot more in the pipeline. Let's take a breather. We'll return shortly after this break.